let's get started here. Today this is the third session of Objective-C. Today, our objective will be to build out this particular application we have here. It's going to be a to-do list app, very simple. A table view will have an add button at the top right here so that the user could put in some sort of list item and save it, right? The app itself won't persist data. Our goal is just to build a simple Objective-C app to get our hands dirty with Objective-C. Okay, feel free to jump in and ask any questions you may have as we are continuing to build this application. All right, so let's get started. Let's open up Xcode. We'll call our app to-do list app or something like that. So new project. New project, it's an iOS application. So we've been doing like Mac OS, right? Mac OS command line tool. But today we'll be actually going into iOS development with Objective-C. So choose iOS and choose app here. And next, for our app name, we'll call it to-do list, or just to-do list, like that. And then we'll say, on the end of it, we'll just put Objective-C or something. So we know it's an Objective-C app. And then we have our team. We're going to be using Storyboard. It's UI kit, and the language is Objective-C. So if you have Swift, you want to change it to Objective-C. And there's no core data today involved. So just uncheck those two. And this is it. So let's go next. And create. Great. So there's our app. This is the first time we're taking a look at Objective-C, like view controllers and stuff. So same as in Swift, we have like an app delegate, we have a scene delegate, but again, in Objective-C, everything we are talking about will be two files. So app delegate has an app delegate.h, it has an app delegate.m. Scene delegate has a scene delegate.h, has a scene delegate.m. Our view controller we have by default here, it has a header file as well as an implementation file. And then we have our storyboard. Storyboard doesn't matter if it's, doesn't care if it's Objective-C or Swift, it's the same thing. Like if you want to drag in a table view, you just drag in a table view, a label, a text field, whatever. You have your assets, all that is the same, right? The only thing that's different is from like app delegate down to like view controller, right? Which is Objective-C there. All right, cool. So let's just run this to make sure everything is good. I'll choose some sort of simulator. I'll run it. Just to make sure we are good. Let me get my simulator here. All right, so this is it. We have our first Objective-C app, right? Believe it or not, that's our first Objective-C app. Nothing is happening yet, but everything is happening here is in that view did load here, right? If you want to change, for example, the color of your background, in Swift, also in Objective-C, you could say view, right? I want to change the color background of the view. I could say background color, right? And I could give it some sort of color, right? So here I could say like system color or some system color. But again, in Swift, you could do this, but in Objective-C, you have to be explicit about the color choice. So I have to explicitly write UI color dot like just some random color, just say yellow here, for example, and don't forget your semicolon. And if we run that app again, we should now see yellow or whatever color you chose shows up, right? So this is how you change the background color, very similar to Swift. Cool. All right, so let's change that up and let's talk about our app. So what does our app look like? Well, our app is embedded in a navigation controller. It has a right bar button item. So I was going to do this in Storyboard, but since we're writing Objective-C, it makes sense for us to write a lot of code in Objective-C and like set up our views programmatically. In that case, the storyboard, the first view we see, like have a navigation controller and embed our view controller in it. So I think we'll do the same thing here today. Cool. So let's get started. We will actually navigate over to the scene delegate, because normally when we want to do our programmatic UI, for example, we want to embed some navigation controller or tab controller, whatever we want to do, we kind of set it up like right in the scene delegate here. So go to the scene delegate.m. Again, we're not going in the header file, we're just going in the implementation file, right? Now, if you take a look at the header file here, you'll see that the window property is in the header file, right? So we know we have access to the window property, very similar to if we were in Swift, the window property would be declared somewhere here. But again, here in Objective-C, the property is declared, if it's public, if you want to make the property private, you put it in here in the interface of the implementation file. But here, since it's in the header file, that means it's public. Anybody could get access to this window property. So let's navigate to the scene delegate.m and let's write some code to set up our UI. And the code will, actually, let me make this bigger. Reference, presentation, large. All right. Is that good? Everybody can see this?
Yeah,
It's better.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. So the code we're gonna write here is, we'll say configure our app to be embedded in a navigation controller, right? That's what we're trying to do here. So we'll set up our window first, right? So I could say step 1, set up window, right? Very similar to what we do in Swift, right? So in Swift, we set up the window. To get access to the window, again, we have a window property. If I type in window like this, I realize that it doesn't show up, right? It doesn't know window. The only way to access this window instance property is either self.window like this, or we could do underscore window, okay? So we'll say underscore window for now. We will set up the frame of the window, because right now the window doesn't have a frame. It doesn't have, it's just declared. It hasn't been defined yet. So we'll actually set up the window right now. So with Objective-C, we want to set something up. We want to allocate memory. We start off with a square bracket. So here we will say UI window. We'll allocate memory for it, and we'll initialize it. Now there's a couple of initializers. There's like init, that doesn't do much. It just like initializes the thing. There's init with coda, which is like from Storyboard. There's init with frame, right? And there's even init with window scene here. Actually, let's try to use init with window scene. No, that's fine. Let's just do init with frame. Init with frame expect some sort of CG rect, right? So this particular CG rect here, let me actually break up that code so it doesn't get too confusing. Let us say bounds. Anybody realize what I just did? I wrote Swift there. So CG rect, we'll say bounds, and then we will say UI screen, main screen, and we'll say dot bounds. Okay, so I just want to break that apart. I could have easily initialized CG rect. This guy is not an object. Everybody sees this, because this is not an object. This is just a primitive type, so I cannot just put a pointer here. It's not a class. All right, so instead of putting all that code here, I could have just like copied that code and put it here. But I really want to break this apart so it's not too confusing with all the square brackets and everything. So now we want to get a CG rect for our window so that the window takes the entire bounds of the device. So here we just grab the screen, main screen, bounds. So now I could just pass in bounds here like that. And don't forget my semicolon. So now my window has a size. Everybody with me?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. And that's something we're doing Swift as well, right? Just less square brackets. Next, we want to give, so I'm kind of doing that in a two-step process. We could have given the window the scene right away, but that's fine. So now I want to give the window, I want to set up the window scene. So I'll say window scene. And then here I will say scene, which is, now again, something here is different. Anybody sees what's different here? Like in Swift, we have an object already defined for us, like with the guard statement, but here we don't have it. It just passes in here. So now we have this scene here in our function. So that scene, I want to get access to that scene to create my window scene. So here I'll just say scene like this. Okay, but the compiler is not happy. What is it saying? Incompatible pointer types assigning to API available iOS window scene. So it's telling us we need to cast this somehow. So this is a scene which is of type UI scene, but we want an object of type UI window scene. So in Objective-C, as opposed to Swift, like in Swift, you could do something like this, like typecast the thing to like UI window scene, something like that. That's how like you typecast something or you downcast something. But in Objective-C, if you want to cast an object to some type, right before the name, you just put parents like this, and I could say UI window scene and put an asterisk because it's an object. Okay, so now this UI scene has been converted to a UI window scene. Everybody with me?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So our window is pretty good. The last thing we need to do for our window is basically make it visible, right? So we could say window underscore window make visible like that, right? And then it just happens to, it's going to show on screen, right? That's the last step. Property access results. Okay, so this we probably need to do in a function. Sorry, let's just put this in a function call here, like that. All right, cool. But we're not done, right? Because we want to have, our point of setting this up is we want to configure our app to be embedded in an application controller. So far, we set up the window. Next step, I could call this step 2. Let's declare a navigation controller. Right, we'll declare a navigation controller and we'll embed our view controller into it as a root controller. But before we do that, let us also get, yeah, let's do that. Let's also get an instance of the storyboard, because what we'll do mix and match here. In the storyboard, we'll add our table view, and then we'll grab that view controller in our code here, which we'll do right now. So here we'll say, get an instance of the main storyboard. So today we'll see a lot of things we could do here in Objective-C. So I want to get an instance of the main storyboard. How do I do that? Well, I'll declare a UI storyboard instance here, like that. I'll call it storyboard. Let's see. Can I just do everything in one go? No, that's fine. I'll call it storyboard. Like that. And now I want to get a UI storyboard instance with the name main. That's why I put this in quotations here. Our storyboard is called main.storyboard. And if we want to get that instance, we have to specify the name, same as we do in Swift. So here I'll say UI storyboard, and UI storyboard has a class method, right? Everybody remember what class methods are?
Yeah, reference method.
Class methods are called on the class itself, right? So on this class here, UI storyboard, I could just call a method called storyboard with name, like that. And it takes in 2 arguments, right? The first argument is the name, which is a string here. So I'll say main here. And the second one, I'll just pass in nil because we are in the bundle, okay? So don't forget, again, same for Swift. If I want to use a class method, I call the method on the class itself. right? So I'm not creating an instance of like UI storyboard and then call storyboard with name. I'm calling storyboard with name directly on the class UI storyboard here. So now we have the main storyboard. We could continue. Next step, let's declare our navigation controller. We'll declare our navigation controller, but before we do that, let us get, we'll say this is step 4. Before we do that, we will say step 3, which is get an instance of the, we'll rename this view controller. Get an instance of the, we'll call it items. Get an instance of items view controller, right, from storyboard.
Alex,
Yes.
have you only created a project and then you typed in 1 and 2?
Oh, sorry, you just stepped in?
Yeah.
Okay, we just created a new Objective-C project. So you go to File, New Project,
iOS.
App, Next, and then make sure the language is Objective-C and give it a name. I think we just called ours to-do list.
To-do list,
And then
interface, storyboard, language, Objective-C.
Yep. And then we like suffix it with like Objective-C just to know it's an Objective-C project.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, because ideally when you push it to GitHub, you could differentiate them. Awesome.
Ready, storyboard, Objective-C, and done. And I gotta put it in the thing. Documents, DSA.
And once you're done, I'll Slack this out so that you on board with us.
Excellent.
All right.
There you go.
So you could just follow along and then I'll just Slack out this snippet. So we've created the instance of storyboard. Now we use that storyboard instance to get an instance of this items view controller. Keep it the same name as mine for now, just to keep everything easy. So items view controller, right? Items, not item. So let's go ahead and do this. So we will say, we don't have it yet, so we'll get compiler errors and everything like that. Actually, let's refactor it right now. Let's take a step back. Let's refactor our view controller. So go to your view controller.h. Go to your view controller.h. Right click on the view controller name here in the interface. You could do that as well.
Yep.
So you're in the view controller.h, right click on the view controller name, refactor, rename, right? Refactor, rename. And give it a couple seconds for it to propagate because it needs to go through all the things with view controller name in there, right? And then just change this to items view controller, like that, right? Items view controller. And when you're done, press enter. Cool. So even the file names change and everything like that. So we are good. So we could now head back to the scene delegate.m and write out items view. Well, if we want to use items view, we have to import it now, right? Okay, so let's go up and import items view controller.h. Again, we always import the header file, not the implementation file. So make sure you import the header file here for the items view controller, and we could continue writing our items view controller here. It's items. Let's just call it items VC. That's fine. And now we have this storyboard instance. We'll use that storyboard. And again, very similar like in Swift, if I want to get an instance from storyboard, I say instance of view controller. It'll take me a while to get the name correct here because my thing is so big, I don't see the full name. All right, that's what I'm looking for. You're looking for instantiate view controller with identifier. And this takes in a string. Again, very similar to Swift. So that's the initializer you're looking for, right? Instantiate view controller with identifier. And the identifier, just copy the name of the class here and paste it in. Okay. All right. And our last step now is going to be the navigation controller. Almost last step. We get in there. So we'll declare a navigation controller. We'll say UI navigation controller. We'll just call it nav controller. And then we'll say UI nav controller like that. We'll allocate memory for it. And then we'll say init with root, right? So I want to initialize it with some root view controller, very similar to Swift, just less code. We'll say init with root view controller, and here it's expecting some sort of UI view controller. We'll pass in our items VC. Don't forget our square bracket and our semicolon. So you build, that should build. And I did say that was the last step, but we have one more step because now we need to tell window, hey, this is your root view controller. So number 5, set the windows. Set the windows root view controller. Like that. And we'll say, what are we going to say here? We'll say window underscore window. It's a function we call in. Set root view controller. And then we'll just pass it nav controller, just like that. And semicolon, and we're done. Finally here. Build, make sure we have no errors. And one, let me slug that out. And if anybody has any errors, please let me know. So that's us here. And you're putting that in the first function in your sim delegate, okay, Juan?
Yep.
All right.
Noticed.
Let me.
Alex, do you mind to select me about the thing too?
I'll just put it in the main channel.
The main channel, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
So we're using a storyboard, but this is kind of like doing it programmatically, like when we do.
Yeah, because if we could just do this in Storyboard, right? And then not write any code, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I want us to get familiar with what Objective-C programmatic UI look like.
Okay, cool.
That's the only reason why we did this. Because other than that, we could just set up everything in the Storyboard and then just do our segues and everything. You got me?
Wait, say that one more time.
That code, we could have done it in Storyboard. I could have just embedded this guy in a nav controller.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that's it. Yes?
But I guess we're not learning anything new out of that.
Yes, exactly.
That makes sense.
Exactly. But here we're doing everything programmatically. There'll be some Storyboard, but a very light Storyboard. Like the only reason why we're grabbing the instance from Storyboard is because we'll have a table view in there.
Right. Yeah, we still need a table view. And,
yeah.
But
and even that we could have done programmatically, but that'll just make the lecture get a bit longer.
Makes sense.
All right.
Let's see. It looks like I have one error. What is this?
We started off
at main bundle nil.
Oh, you need to make sure you import this guy.
Import who?
Items view controller.
Items view controller.h. Yes, I got that. Items view controller.h imported. At main. What's main?
Main is the name of the storyboard here. Very similar to Swift when we try to grab the storyboard.
Okay. So that's when instantiating the storyboard. Bundle nil. What's it saying? Non-ASCII characters are not allowed. Remove remove. I think it's just when I copy and paste it.
Maybe there's double check, build it and see if there's any. There's no, maybe the quotes, double check the quotes and make sure they're correct quotes, because sometimes the quotes come out wrong when you copy paste.
I think that's what it is. Yeah, it's that.
Yeah, so we have two sets of quotes here, main and items.
Yep, and that's exactly where it's happening.
All right.
All right, good.
Cool?
Yep.
Perfect. All right, so we set up this. If we run this, nothing much is gonna happen. Let me just run this. Everybody run your code or run your app rather. And let's see what we have. So, okay, first error. Somebody tell me what's happening here. Terminating app due to uncaught exception. Reason, Storyboard does not contain a view controller if identifier, this guy. What do we need to do? That's Swift, that's Objective-C, that's iOS. That's an iOS bug.
That's an iOS bug or error?
An iOS error, sorry.
Do you have to change the identifier in the actual Storyboard view controller?
Exactly. So now we have, everybody got that, right? So we are trying to get an identifier here that doesn't exist. So as one says, we have to go to our Storyboard file. We have to go to our items, view controller, scene, and we have to open up our inspector, go to our class inspector, and where it says Storyboard ID, we need to paste this in. So make sure it's the same name as the class. So do me a favor, just copy. I'm gonna assume maybe there was an error there in the naming. Make sure you copy the class name. Actually, it probably needs to be the same as what I have. So make sure it's items view controller and press enter, okay? And if you run your code again, it should run perfectly without an error. So you should now see your Navbar. So we have our Navbar ready to go. I'll give it a few seconds here, make sure everybody's up to speed here. Any questions? Anybody still have that bug, that error?
I'm running it now. Let's see. Oh, iPod Touch. What is this?
Eric, is your app running? Eric M?
No, not yet.
And Eric May.
I was just following along.
Okay. Are you gonna code or just following along pretty much?
Just following along.
Okay, cool. All right. So we should have our app now showing a Navbar and an empty view controller. All right. Let us keep going here. Next, we will now, let's just put our storyboard, our table view. Since we're here, let's just put a table view on our table view controller, on our view controller. So go to your object library, get a table view, that, and then we'll just make this pretty much like 0 all around here. I'll just pin that to all the edges. And set my constraints on this. So 0 all around and 4 constraints, not 3. What else we'll do? We'll add a cell. So select your table view. We'll add 1 prototype cell. And we'll make this, click on your cell. The reuse identifier, just call it, call it item cell, press enter, and we'll make the style subtitle, like that, okay? So table view, 1 cell, the style is subtitle. Open up your assistant editor. So open up your assistant editor so you have your view controller next to your code here, or your scene next to your code, and we'll control drag, right? So that's the first time we control drag into like Objective-C view controller here. So we'll control drag the table view, right? So control drag table view. And if you noticed, the only place you could drop this is inside that interface right here. Inside that interface, that's where you're gonna drop or connect to your table view. And we'll give it a name. I'll just call mine table view. You could call yours item table view if you want, but I'll just call mine table view here. Connect, and this is what we have. We have a property, weak, non-atomic. We'll come and talk about that at some point. We have our IB outlet. We have our table view, and it's a class, so it has a pointer here. I think that's all we have to do here. Just make sure that your cell has an identifier. So double check, click on the cell, and make sure there's an identifier here, right? Cool, great. So we could close out of that and we could now actually just run our app and make sure we do have our table view on screen. Because if everything went well, we are grabbing the instance, right? So we have our table view on screen, right? Because what happens is in our scene delegate, we are getting an instance of this view controller from Storyboard. If we didn't do this, and again, that happens many times, you guys have done that as well. I've done it as well, where you think you grab in, like you do something like this, items, view controller, you say, you don't have to type this out. You say items VC equal to items view controller, you allocate memory for it, you initialize it like this, and you run it. Did I call it something different? Yes, I did. And you run it and you realize, oops, where's my storyboard? Or where's my table view? Everybody with me? That's happened to us, yes?
Mhm.
Because we are initializing an empty view controller. What we want to do here is not this. We want to get it from Storyboard itself, right? So same thing for Objective-C, same thing for Swift. So now we are good to go. We have our table view. Let's keep going. Erica, you sure you don't want to have, you sure you don't want to code along with us?
I'm
What's that?
I'll rewatch the recording.
Okay, got it. All right, cool. Cool, so we have all that good to go. Next step, what do we want to do? We could go many ways. To take a look at our app again, this is where we headed. So we could actually let's go ahead and build this, this nav item, this UI bar button item. Let's do that. That's a good place to be. So let us go put that in. So in the items view controller.m, here, this is this is where we are. We'll create a new function. It's an instance function. If I say instance function, how does it start? Is it a plus or is it a minus?
A minus.
A minus, right? And then in our case, it's not returning anything. So it's void. And what else? We'll call it configure navbar, like that. It doesn't take in any arguments either. So let's keep going. First step, I'll actually document a lot of things we're doing here. I'll say step one, create an image for the bar button item. Let me take this out. I don't think we need that right now. And let's just get some more space here as well. Like this bar. Okay. So create an image for the bar button item, right? And our bar button item is this plus icon here. So we'll just get it from SF symbols. As a matter of fact, SF symbols got updated. So you guys could update SF symbols if you want. But the current version of SF symbols, oh, I have it open already. It's just in a different window. The current version for it is, I think 2.1. Yeah, 2.1. So that there's an update for that with like some new things. And what's cool is like they're showing you like what's new right over here. So if you want to download it, you just gotta basically just Google SF symbols Apple, and you gotta install it directly from that page. What am I talking about? You could go here, SF symbols Apple, something like that, and then here there's a download link somewhere. Did I pass it already? Right here. If I click on that, right here. So this 2.1 right here. I don't think you could get it directly from the app, unfortunately. Like if you go to SF symbols, there's no like update button. That would be cool, right? But there's no like
in the App Store, no?
Nah, it's not in the Apple App Store.
It doesn't come with like the updated Xcode version or something like that?
No.
Damn. Didn't the last one come with Xcode? Like we didn't have to download, or maybe I'm forgetting
I think we always had to.
Okay.
I'll drop it in the Slack here. Anybody that want to update theirs? All right, cool. All right, so create an image for the bar button item, and we'll use the system image. So here we want to create an image. It's UI image. Image here. Again, this is Objective-C because in Swift, I'll just say like let image and then just set whatever image I want. But here I need to create an image using that syntax. So UI image. And now I could say system. Again, this is a class method, which is good. I could just say system image named. You see like how Objective-C like really spells out everything. But in Swift, it's just called system name, right? But in Objective-C, it's like system image named, right? So here it's expecting a string. We're gonna use the plus. We'll use the plus. Wait, just put plus here. We'll use the plus icon, this guy. So just put in plus here. So we have an image, great. Next step, let's create our bar button item. So create bar button item. Say UI bar button item. We'll just call this, plus button for now. Right. Cool. And next we'll say UI, is it a class method? No. So we'll say UI, let me back up. 1 bracket, 2 brackets, because we need 4 brackets here. We'll first say UI bar button item. We'll allocate memory for it. And we'll say init with one of those initializers. On your screen, which is probably smaller than mine, you've probably seen everything spelled out and nice, but here I'm a bit big here. So I'm looking for initializer with image, which is not the menu.
With image and menu, or just with image?
No, just with image and style. The one that says init with image and style. You see it?
With image, style, target, action, and we just set those to no. Okay.
Yes, that one. So press enter on that. So we have our image on line 23. So I could say image here. I did have it. Okay, cool. So image is the first argument. Second argument is looking for style. Again, here you have to basically write out everything because there's no like enum, right? I could just say something like dot. Like
I
dot
see
plain.
why enums are so nice now.
Right? Right, but here I cannot just say dot plain, right? I have to come here and write out the whole thing, and hopefully I know what I'm typing. So I'll say UI bar button item style plain. Target is our self, and action in Objective-C. When we say action, we say asterisk, we say hashtag selector, right?
Right.
In Objective-C, we gotta say @selector here. And then pass in whatever the function name is, which we don't have yet, which we'll get soon. When the user presses this, what I want to do, I want to add an item. So just call this add target, add item for now.
Wouldn't it be something like add button pressed or something like that?
Yeah, but we'll just call it add item. And let's create it right now so the compiler doesn't complain. Actually, it's not even complaining really, even if there's no item necessarily, but it's not erroring, which is funny, right?
It doesn't care.
It doesn't care, but Swift will give you an error right now. So let's create a next instance function. We'll call this add item. Okay, so now this warning goes away, and now we have our plus button ready to go. So when the user presses this, we'll add an item. Last thing we have to do here is, in that little function, is set the plus button as the right bar. Right, so we'll do that here. We have access to our navigation. You see, everything here we have to, like, and again, in Swift, I could just say navigation item, right? I don't have navigation item here. I have to say self or underscore. So I'll say self dot navigation item dot right bar button item, and then I'll assign it our plus button. Okay. Any questions so far? Any errors, warnings?
No, I'm all good.
Cool.
I'm surprised this is, I guess some things have dot notation because
They're properties.
they're properties.
So this here is a property, but if you're trying to call a function, this is a function.
Oh, okay, so properties.
So those are the difference. The properties you could access via dot notation, because
Mhm.
write button item is a property on the application item. If it was a function, I would have to do something like this.
Okay, that makes
Okay.
sense because I think last lesson we were calling the property name on people, and that was just dot notation.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So we have our configure navbar. Let's just call it here in our view load. Again, if I just type in configure, the compiler is going to be like, what are you talking about? I have nothing called configure. What do we have to use? We'll say self dot. No self dot, actually. If I say self dot, that's not going to work either. You with me, Juan? That's a good question you just brought up earlier. It's not a property, right? How do I-
Configure
Uh-huh.
would be, I mean, it sounds like a function, so.
Yeah, it is a function, yeah. How do I call it?
What are we doing exactly? We're configuring the,
We add in this bar button item here.
oh, we're adding the bar button to the actual
Navbar.
navbar.
But how do I call that function here on 923 from 920?
I guess you'll need the square bracket notation, and then you'll have to do it on, oh, you already, self is the thing being called, and then we're gonna call the function right after whatever type function we need.
Right,
Configure
so
navbar.
we'll say space configure navbar, right? So that's how we call that function. We call it on ourself, which is an instance, and then we call the function configure navbar. If it was a property, like self.view is a property, I could say dot here. You with me?
Yep.
Like we set our background color earlier. That black color, something like that.
Right. So
Right. If it's a property, I use
property.
dot notation. If it's a function, I say square bracket, self, space, and the function name.
And then configure navbar is already doing everything as far as adding the bar button to the
item.
navigation, and then.
Exactly. So
Okay.
now we could run our code and verify that our plus button does show, which it does here. Cool. Awesome. Other things we could do here, since we call this like configure navbar, we could give it some sort of title. Let me just give it a title at the bottom here. I'll just say self dot navigation item dot title, and we'll call this to do list, just like that. Run this again. String literal. Forgot my at symbol. Run this again, and then we have our to-do list here. Everybody has that showing up? Yes.
It is running. Yep.
Cool. Awesome. So let's keep going. So when we click this particular button, for now, what we want to happen is we want to show this like dialog box, which is like a alert controller with 2 text fields. So that's what we'll do. Let's continue on here. So right here in my add item, I will set up I'll set up a alert controller with 2 text fields that allows the user to put in information. All right, cool. Let's set that up. There's some more code here we have to write. First, we'll say initialize an alert controller. And here I'll say UI alert controller is an alert controller. That. And on my alert controller class, I have a class method called alert controller with title, right? So you type in alert, there's only one initializer here, and it takes in some arguments, very similar to Swift. It takes in the title, message, and some style. For our title here, I'll keep it empty for now. Message, empty for now. Preferred style, again, not an enum here, but some sort of UI collection controller style thing we have to type out. So type out UI, alert, controller, style. And the style we want, we'll make it an alert. Right, alert is in the middle, and the alert sheet comes from the bottom. So we just want this to be in the middle here, like this. So it's gonna be an alert here. Okay, so for the title, what we're gonna set the title as? We'll say add a new to-do list. For the message, we'll keep it empty for now. You could add something if you want after, and we will present it, right? So to present it, we'll say self, present, view controller. Again, very similar to Swift here. The APIs are the same, it's UI kit. View controller is alert controller, animated, true, completion. I have nothing for completion here. So that's enough to show it, right? So let's just test it out. Let's make sure it shows up first. I'll give you a few seconds to keep typing. All right, so let's run it and just verify that it does show. So if I click on the plus icon, I should see an alert, add a new item, right? There's no way to dismiss this right now, but that's what we have, okay? Cool. So let's keep going. We'll add our 2 text fields. So here I'll say add 2 text fields to the alert controller. So on our alert controller, our instance of alert controller will say add text fields with configuration, which takes in some completion. For now, we'll just keep the completion empty. Let me back up here for a second. All right. So we start off, open square bracket, our instance alert controller. We type in the instance method called add text field with configuration, which takes in some sort of completion handler. We'll just press enter, and we'll put a semicolon right after. Right, so that's our first text field. For now, we'll just copy that code, add a second one, just like that. No extra code here. I'll just put code here. If we need to add code here later, we will. But for now, we're not adding any code here. So we have our 2 text fields. We added them. So you just keep adding. Same way you add actions, I could just keep adding text fields. So we added 2 text fields here. Let's actually give them placeholders too. So add 2 text fields to the alert controller. Let's say add placeholder text to the text fields, like that. And let's access those. So we'll say alert controller dot text fields, which is an array of text fields. Here you see NS array, right? It's an array of text fields. So we'll say text fields. We know we added 2 text fields, so we could access them via subscript, right? So the first text field, dot placeholder, I want to give it some text. So I'll say, the first one, what do we want them to say? We'll say something like, enter the name of the item. That's fine, that's good. And for the second one, we'll say alert controller text fields at index 1, which is the second item, placeholder equal to, this one will say enter the topic, right? Enter the topic. Great. All right, again, let's test this. Let's make sure it works. And if there's any issues, please let me know before we continue. So run the app again. If I click on my add button, I see 2 text fields with placeholders, right? Enter the name of the item and enter the topic. But still, there's no way to dismiss this, right? So we need somehow to dismiss this. So we'll have 2 action items, one to dismiss and one to save. I'll stop here for a second. Anybody have any errors, warnings, questions?
Can you select that code block? Cause
Which one? The one in the add item?
Oh no, the entire alert controller. Because I don't know what's going on. My laptop is like acting weird.
It doesn't like Objective-C, that's what it is. All right, so basically you want the add item function, right? Because that's the one that has the one that has the alert controller. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So copy that and drop.
And now it's frozen.
It's frozen now?
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna just shut the whole thing down.
Okay. All right, cool.
I wasn't sure how you were gonna differentiate between the 2 text fields. I was like, they don't have
names,
like name. I was like, are you gonna use the tags? And then I saw, oh, there's an array. Okay.
Yeah, it's an array. It's pretty cool. All right. So we have that. It shows up. It shows up for everybody, correct?
Yep.
All right, cool. Let's continue on. I think our next step is we cannot dismiss yet, right? So let's add 2 action items. So we'll say step 4. I mean, obviously, all what we write in here, we could break it up in small functions, but that's fine for now. Step 4, we'll say add action items. Add action items, cancel, and save, right? Those are the 2 we'll add. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and say UI alert action. And the first one, we'll call it cancel action. And open square bracket, UI alert control, no, UI alert action, sorry. And here, what is the class method called? Alert action title, sorry. You see, also code completion is harder, right? Like in Swift, if I'm looking for some function name, I just say dot, right? Everybody with me? Yes?
Yeah, it pulls up the whole list.
Yeah, it shows you the whole list, like what's available. But here, either you have to look at the docs or look at the docs to see.
You could press every letter on the keyboard one by one.
Yeah. All right. So here we have alert, action. So you're looking for the initializer action with title, right? Press enter and the action will just put an empty string for now. The style will say UI alert style. We'll make it cancel because there's 3 styles, right? There's default, cancel, and destructive. Again, very similar to Swift because we're using the same framework, right? This is UIKit, but this is just like UIKit perspective for for Objective-C, right? But it's still UIKit. So here we'll say cancel, and for the handler, let's just keep it empty for now. Just press enter. Just put handler code here. And don't forget your semicolon. So that's our cancel action. And next we will have the next action, UI alert action. And this one is going to be the save action. syntax is the same. UI alert action, action with title. I start off with an empty string. I'll fill it out later. And UI alert, almost typing blindly. UI alert action style. I'll put default. And for the handler, we definitely need code here. So handler code here. All right, so we have our two actions. We haven't added them to, don't forget your semicolon. We haven't added the actions to the alert controller. So here, let me rephrase this, not add action, but define action items, right? And now we'll add them. So step 5, we'll say add actions to the alert controller. So here we'll just say alert controller. Again, it's not a property, so I can just say add. Again, Swift doesn't care. If I say add, that would just work, because Swift, you could call functions with that syntax, and you could call properties with that syntax. But Objective-C, you cannot call functions with that syntax. So here, if it's a function, I have to say alert controller and say add action, and I'll pass in the cancel action. And I'll put in my square bracket. It will give me my first square bracket as well. Okay? It will autocomplete the first square bracket, right? So if I just start off with no square bracket and I finish, I put a square bracket at the end, it will autocomplete the last square bracket. So that's cool. And then this, yeah, exactly. So the second one is alert controller that I keep doing that. It's not that. It's just add action. And then this one is save action. Close it. And here we are good. So let's test this, right? So run it. Click add. Oh, the actions are here, they work, but they have no title.
No title, yeah.
So for cancel, just call it cancel. And for save, just call it save. And run it again. And click. And now we have cancel and we have save, right? We cannot do anything yet, but we could dismiss by just clicking any of them and they dismiss, right? Cool. How are we doing? How are we spacing?
Pretty
are we
good.
up to where I am now?
Can I get that whole code again? Sorry.
Just this, so we've just been working on save, right? Or rather this particular one. So I'll just send that to you.
Oh, no, I need 4, 5.
Oh, 4, 5, and just 4, 5, right?
I think. Yeah, just 4. Oh wait, 4, 5. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. If there's any, which there are, be careful with the quotes. You have to change them, okay?
Yep, I just noticed that.
Yeah. All right, so we are good. Let's keep going. Let me just run that app again and see where our next step is. So I could click on this, it shows up, I click save, nothing happens. All right, let's continue on. So our next step in our app is to populate our table view with the things we added, right? Let's actually create some default items to actually make our table view work. And then we'll actually create dynamic items, which will be the last thing we do today. So first, let us create some files. Let's create some files. We'll create our model. Our model, we'll call our model item. So let's create some files here. I'll create it right here. It's fine. So Command N. What type of file are we creating? Anybody? I want to create a model in Objective-C. How many files do I need?
Oh, Objective-C, I forgot. That's 2 files.
2 files, yeah, 2 files. A header file and an implementation file. So let's start
I
off
was
with
just gonna say, just make a Swift file real quick.
Yeah, we can. I mean, maybe at the end we'll see adding Swift and Objective-C together. Or something like that. So for now, header file here. and then just call it item. And then we'll also create an implementation file by selecting Objective-C file and calling it the same thing, item. Great. Cool. So we have our .h, we have our .m. What do we want to really define here? We could remove this. Let us start off by saying in my .h, I will say interface, which is the interface here. I'll say item. Item inherits from NS object. And let's go to our implementation file. We'll say at implementation. The class name is item. And don't forget to import our item.h. So far what we have our model, 2 files. First file is the header. Second file is the implementation file. So in our header file, we want to define some properties and methods and instance or initializer. So we'll say property or properties, methods, initializers. So the properties for this particular model, we'll keep it simple. We'll have an NS string here. And we'll call this like name, right? Item name. And then we'll have our next property, NS string, and then we'll call it topic, right? Like the name of the topic of the thing. Like think of this name as, could be something like study list, right? And the topic could be the essay, something like that. Keep it simple. We could get more explicit. We could do things like date. We could do things like is complete and really go crazy, but that's fine for now. Our initializer, we want that. So we will say, and why do we want a custom initializer again? Because if somebody is creating an item, right now, the only way they could create an item is by saying item equal to item, allocate memory for the item, and init the item. That's all they could do right now. And if they want to give it a name, a topic, they have to do that individually. Like they have to say item.name equal to whatever, and they have to say item.topic equal to whatever. We don't want to do that, right? We want to be able to give them an API so that they could say item allocate and init with name, whatever the name of the thing is, and topic. Right? Everything in one line. That's what we want to have them do, not this, right? So we got to give them some sort of initializer. So let's go ahead and do that. So the initializer is an instance. We'll say init with name. And name here is some sort of string. And a string. And this is the name of the thing. Right? But we also want to give them the topic as well. So here we'll say init with name and, let me close this bar so we have more space. Init with name and topic. And topic, we will say, is also an NS string. And this is just topic. Okay, so that's our initializer. And our method will have a class method to just return us some default values. Actually, my class method, no, that's fine. We'll have a class method. It's going to return us some NS array of objects. NS array of things. And we'll just say fetch items. It's a class method. When we say fetch items, it's just going to return us an array of items. Everybody with me so far? Questions?
Can you repeat that one more time?
This method is just to simply return us an array of items that we've created with hard-coded items.
And we'll just call it on the item class.
Yes, we're gonna call it on the item class, exactly. So it's gonna be used like, we'll say item fetch items. And we'll just return us an array of items. But we have to go define those items, which this will help us to define those items.
Mm.
Cool. Do we have this header file ready to go?
I have it.
So let's go, we declared it, let's go implement them in the implementation file. So in the implementation file here, right, we have warnings everywhere because we need to define those functions. The first one is we have our init with, you could just simply type out init with name and press enter. That's one we have to implement. And the other one is the class method. Let me just put the class method at the bottom. That's fine for now. The class method is fetch items. So just type in fetch items, right? So now we have no more warnings, right? We have errors here because we have to actually define the instance. So let's go ahead and first do the initializer. So as we did last week, this is very similar. So we'll start off by saying if, here we want to say if self gets returned from, first we call super init, it gives us self. We initialize self properties here. So initialize all properties here. And then when we're done, we return self. We return self to whoever calls it, right? Or whoever initializes this. Basically what that happens is, if I have to go back to the header file, when I initialize this and I say return self, self gets returned and now item has the new instance. So cool. So now let's initialize our properties. So we have two properties. We'll say self name equal to name. And we'll say self topic equal to topic. So our initializer is ready to go. And now we could actually use our initializer here to create some items, right? So let's create some items. We'll create about 5 items or so, not too much. Let's go create some items. All right. So let's return some array of items. I'll use my initializer. I'll say item, allocate, init with, give it some name, and give it some topic. Okay, we'll copy this for about 5 instances. So you could copy, wait, where's the error? I'm missing a bracket, 1, 2, 3, 4. This guy's missing 1 here. Build, wait. 1, 2, 3. Expected, build. Return array. Expected. Init with, I allocated you. Init with this.
I said the semicolon.
Oh yeah, sorry. Why am I have a semicolon here? I want to have a comma. Thank you. Thanks, Ben. Should be a comma. So just copy this 4 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you could remove the last one. Okay. So we have 5 items we'll create, and we'll give them names now. So I'll just say coffee with Facebook engineer. And this is, the topic is informational interview. The second one will say phone interview with Snap. And this one is, we'll just call it second interview. Third one, we'll call it review hash tables. And this is just DSA. The fourth one, we'll call this push app to test flight. And this one is just iOS app development. And the last one, we'll just call this update readme for capstone project. And this one, it's just GitHub. Great. So we have, let me build that, make sure we have no errors. So here we have some items. So we have 5 items. When we load our table view, it will always have 5 items, and then we could add more items to it. Again, we could cover persistence, but that's not the day for it. That's just too much. But for now, we want to be able to populate this in a table view and also add more items to it. Questions? Errors?
No, it's all good.
All right, cool. So let's now go over to our view controller here and populate. Actually, let's create, before we populate, let's actually, in your interface here, like right where it says UI table view, add a new property. Add a new property, and we'll just define this as a NS, we'll make it NS mutable array. And we'll just call it items. Okay. NS mutable array items. And in viewDid load here, we'll just say items. We need to allocate memory for it. So we'll say NS mutable array, allocate memory, initialize it. Actually, I could initialize it with, no, that's fine. Should I? Yeah, let's do that. I could initialize it with an array, right? That looks like this. I need to set self here. So this is perfectly fine. But this array here will be our fetch items array. I'll do this in, I could do this in line, or I could do this, actually, let's just do it in line. I think that's okay. Yeah, let's just do it in line. So this array here will be a next set of square brackets. And then we'll say item fetch build fetch. Did I not call it fetch items?
Good.
Oh, what's
You
the problem
import it.
here? What am I missing? You said it, I think. Import, right? So we got to import item. So import item.h. Don't forget that. And now we could say fetch items and build. So when I did tell you this, there could be more brackets here.
Could there be more brackets?
How many do we have so far? 6?
Why do we need, wait, yeah, we have, shouldn't there be 4? What am I missing? Oh, I'm missing brackets because I forgot to call the, okay, yeah, yep.
You see how we could build brackets really quickly?
This is not
again,
friendly.
I could break it up, right? And then instead of doing this, I could say like fetch items, right? Instead of doing this, we could do something like, but again, just like more code anyway. I would have to declare the thing again. Cool. So we have our items from our fetch items. So right now, the table view, that's the table view's data, by the way. table views data. It's items, but we have more code to write. We need to now go ahead and conform. We haven't seen how to conform to a table view data source. Let's go ahead and do so. So we'll now conform to the UI table view data source. So where we're going to do this, we'll do it right at that interface here. I'll actually put some comments here. So and I'll break that up a little bit. So conform to UI table view data source. And how do we conform to that? We can conform to it like this in angle brackets, and then you put the protocol name. In that case, it's UI table view data source. Okay. So you do it right at the interface level here.
I think we would, it's similar to like what we would do. Well, we never do it in what's that thing called? In UI kit.
Well, this is UI kit, right? But Objective-C, right?
Objective-C, yeah, and so yeah, you're in Swift.
In Swift, you would just do like colon here,
extension.
UI table view data source.
Right. But we always like create an extension and then we rather than
do it
conform to it, in line.
Yeah. All right, so we conform to it now. We need to implement it, right? Because that's why we have those warnings here, right? But we're not going to add the stubs, right? We'll just go at the bottom and we'll do it ourselves. So make sure you conform to it here. And at the very bottom of all that stuff, let's go down here.
Wait, how do you conform to it again? Is it before or after the parentheses?
After the parents.
Okay.
You put angle brackets.
Okay.
And if you want more, you could just put a comma and then UI table view delegate if you want to have more protocols to conform to.
Okay. Cool.
And then at the bottom, since we don't have extensions per se here, we could break up our code by saying pragma mark. That's a nice way to break it up. You could do that in Swift as well. UI table view data source. So now when you go to when you go up here, you could see it really quickly by saying like UI table view data source, and you could just jump to it. Okay. So UI table view data source, we only have two methods. What are the two methods that we need to implement here?
The young number of rows and the self for row.
Very good. So number of rows. And here we'll just return, what are we returning?
The count of the items.
Very good. So we'll say self items.count. And we'll have self for row. And here we need to create a cell. So we'll say UI table view cell is some cell. And we'll say table view, we're about to call a method. That's why I have my angle bracket here. Table view dequeue reusable cell with identifier.
That's mine and UI table.
And this guy, we call it item cell and the index path. So all that becomes very familiar. Yes?
So,
and we'll just return cell. All that is very familiar at this point. I mean, again, minus like, doing this, which is not needed in objectives. In Swift, we'll just say like, let's cell, right? But our cell is ready to go. Now let's get an item. I keep doing this. Let's get an item. What's our item type? Our item type is item. I want to get an item from my index path. So my array is self.items, and I want to index into this index path. Index path dot go. So now I have an item, and I want to configure my cell. So I'll say cell dot text label dot text equal to item dot name, and cell dot detail text label dot text equal to item dot topic. Okay. How are we doing? Doing good?
Pretty good.
Okay, I see thumbs up there. All right, so what are we missing here? If I run my app, nothing is gonna show up. What am I missing? Interview question for the job. Nothing to do for Objective-C.
Did you do the delegate?
Data source, right?
Data
Yeah,
source?
so I need to set up my data source, right? Everybody heard Mr. Eric May here. Eric May got the job. So self table view dot data source, we need to set this. And now if we run it, unless anything else is going on, we should have our item showing up. All right.
I see my table view showing up. Table view. Where did we declare? We declared it when we
In the
moved it over.
interface, in the interface here, let me just get this out of the way. It's in the interface here. We control drag. Did you control drag?
Yeah, controlled. I remember control dragging at least.
Did your
Where
table
did
view
I-
UI show on your?
Oh, I called it table view with an uppercase T. Okay.
Refactor that.
Yeah.
Cool. So does everybody's item show? Eric May, Eric, does your item show? Oh, you're following along, sorry.
Yeah, I was just following.
That's fine. Cool.
along.
So let's keep going. Last thing we need to do is when I add, I want to be able to actually add something and it shows up here. So let's do that in the save. So let's implement the save functionality. And that's it actually. That's all we have to do. Just implement the save functionality, which should be in its own function, right? But for now, we just have everything here. So when I click save, I want things to happen. Handle code here. Step one, what do I want to do? Well, I want to create some sort of index path. Create an index path at the end of items array. That's one of the things I want to do. What else I want to do? Let's see. Create an index path. Insert the object, obviously. Step two, insert. Actually, let's just do this as step one. Step one. Step two, we'll do this. Step one, insert the new item. But even inserting the new item, we have to create the new item, right? And that's fine, we'll just do everything in once. So insert the new item, create an index path for that item. And then lastly, insert index path into table. And then we're done here. So insert the new item. We have a mutable array, so we should be able to do like self.items add object, but we don't have the item yet. So let's take a step back. We could create the item. So we'll say, I keep the let again. I should, I feel like that should be a bingo game. The string for the name. So let's get the name, and we'll get the name from the text field. So the minute the person press save, we're not going to check if anything is empty or anything like that for now, but we could. But the minute the person press save, that means they have intention to save something. So here we'll say name. We'll get the name from alert controller text fields first index dot text, right? So that's the name. NS string. Did I miss a colon or something? Yeah, I did. That's why it doesn't want to autocomplete for me. NS string. Now we want to get the topic. So the topic is alert controller, text fields, dot text. Again, you could check to see if it's like empty, give an alert or not do anything. But for now, we'll just keep it simple. So we have a name, we have a topic. That means we could create an item. So we'll say item, new item equal to item, allocate memory for the item, initialize the item with our custom initializer. That takes in a name and that takes in a topic. Cool. So we have a new item. Awesome. Insert the new item. So we have this new item. Now we could insert this new item in here. So I could say self items, add object, and the new item is just called new item. So step one is done. Step two, we need to create an index path so that we could just like, with animation, just add it to the end. So here, let's create an index path. So NS index path is an object index path, and we want to create one. So NS index path, NS index path. And here we want to say index path, index path with row. There we go. So select the initializer that says index path for row in section. For the row, we want to add it to the end of the array. So we'll say self dot items dot count -1. And then for the section, we only have one section. If we have one section, what's the index?
0.
0. Very good. Awesome. So we have our index path ready to go. And now let's just insert this index path into the table view. So we'll say self.table view insert rows at index paths, right? It takes an array of index paths. So here we'll just pass in an array. And animation is UI table view row animation, UI table view row animation. We could select any sort of animation we want. We'll just say automatic and colon here. Now the array of index paths, we'll just pass in our index path there in an array, right? Like that. A bit of work, but we should be very close. If not, we should be pretty much done with the logic of this. Any questions so far? Okay, so run the app and let's see if we could actually add items. So if I click on add, I go to my topic, to my name, I say create an MVVM app with Swift UI, something like that. And then here, I'll just put MVVM, or maybe just Swift UI. And then if I click save, it saves, right? I could create a next item. I could say read up bird sort. And here I could just put DSA, save, and it saves. Okay. So I think we did a lot today. I think you guys will acknowledge that as well. But there's even more you could do with this app if you want to do that, or if you want to just create this app in Swift and then add all the things you want to add to it, either way. But we've done a lot today as far as like creating an Objective-C app and implementing functionalities like adding to a table view and such. So we have time for one more app, I think, next week, where the obvious of like grabbing JSON data and populating a table view and having some segue. And I think that's going to conclude our Objective-C tour.